Hello. In our latest tribute to Ireland, we're going to do Kilbeggan Single Pot Still, paired with the Filthy Hooligan Shamrock Edition by Alec Bradley. This is N&J Cigar and Whiskey. So as always, we start with the whiskey. We start with the whiskey because whatever you put in your mouth will affect the taste of whatever you're pairing it with or whatever you're drinking. So like tonight we had barbecued wings and ribs, so that may affect how I process the taste of my Kilbeggan Single Pot Still. Kilbeggan is an interesting story. You probably have seen a lot of Kilbeggan products. Usually it's a single grain or even maybe a single malt, but this is a Kilbeggan Single Pot Still. Kilbeggan is owned by Beam Suntory, and I believe it has been since 2007. But it has the distinction of being the oldest distillery in Ireland. It was established in 1757, and it currently runs the oldest copper pot still in Ireland. It actually, at one point, was transferred over to the Tullamore distillery somewhere around the 1800s, but has since been reinstalled. I believe it's part of Jim Beam's sort of recovery of the traditions of Ireland. The mash bill is like all single pot stills. It's malted barley and unmalted barley. A lot of it has to do with the old tax dodge of Ireland in the 1700s and Irish whiskey. But it also has a 2.5% addition of oats, and it's supposedly to add creaminess to it. So that's the history of Kilbeggan Single Pot Still. They just started releasing whiskeys distilled in the Kilbeggan distillery in 2014, and so this just became available in our area maybe 6 months ago, and even then its availability is pretty spotty. So as soon as I saw this at our local liquor store, snapped it up so we could talk about it. And as we get on the nose, that is bright apple and baked bread, like biscuit bread. Like it has sort of a vanilla aroma too. You can see the color. The color is much like the tealing. It's very gold. It's the best way. It's almost like apple juice, compare that with sort of that reddish hue that you get out of red breast, even green spot, which is a little bit darker. This is much lighter, and the aromas are much lighter. So on the initial taste, you get honey and honeysuckle and that apple, and then it transitions, and you think it's just going to be this abundance of sweetness, but it transitions into a white pepper, which is kind of interesting. And then that finish lingers for a little while. This, by the way, is a 46% alcohol by volume, and you can see it's got some pretty decent legs. There is a creaminess to it, so maybe the addition of the oats to the mash bill really did something. Very good whiskey. We're going to see how this develops and how it pairs with our Filthy Hooligan, the Shamrock Edition, in just a bit. Sláinte. This is, oh, forgot where the camera was, sorry. This is the Shamrock Filthy Hooligan by Alec Bradley. Neat little band, and you can see it is a double, well, no, actually it looks like a single cap now that I'm looking at it on the camera. Yeah, I think a single cap. Again, I could tell you that they were tight and visible seams, but yeah, of course they are. It's a triple barber pole, so you can really see the seams. It's funny, as I did the research on Alec Bradley and their Filthy Hooligan, there's some discrepancy as to what the filler is. Some sites will tell you that the filler is Nicaraguan. Other sites will tell you that the filler is a combination of Panamanian and Honduran tobaccos. All I can tell you is it smokes a little bit like a Nicaraguan filler, but you never know. The binder is definitely an Ecuadorian Sumatra, and the wrapper is Honduran Candela and mixed with a Honduran Habano Maduro and a Honduran Habano Natural. So that's where you get this kind of funky triple barber pole, and you can see there's some leaf veins there. I mean, it's a little bit of a rustic looking cigar. These run about 12 bucks. This is the third year, 2001. This is the third year they've been, or I'm sorry, 2021. This is the third year that they've been in production. Come in boxes of 10. Not really strong aromas off the foot. A little bit of hay. And cold draw, same thing, kind of hay. So off we go to toast this up and give it a light. Off the light, it's very grassy. A lot grassier than the original Filthy Hooligan was. Filthy Hooligan, the original, had kind of muted flavors. This, I get a sense of almost freshly cut grass. So we'll get into this and we'll pair it up with the whiskey. Well, we're about 20 minutes into the cigar, and you can see the burn is nice and straight, but the ash is very flaky and about to fall, which is one of the reasons why we came back. And the smoke is ample, it's light, it's creamy, excellent smoke output, and you can see it's just pouring off the cigar. Relatively quick burn, and it's a very light cigar. I mean, from a strength standpoint, I would call it mild. Flavors are kind of interesting. It started off very grassy, but for me it turned on the draw as it started burning through some of the wrapper. A mix of grassy and savory, like leather. Not like, you know, some of the deep, rich Maduro cigars, but you can definitely get the Maduro in here, and I think that's where that leather's coming from, that mix of the Maduro and the classic Habano. And there is like a kick to it. It's not overwhelming spice, but there's a slight kick to it, and on the retrohale and the finish, you get a black pepper. Yeah, definitely a black pepper on the finish. And when you pair it up with the Kilbeggan, again, this cigar is not going to overwhelm it. But it really brings out the creamy, sweet, desserty notes of the Kilbeggan. And then that Kilbeggan white pepper really kicks in. And the Kilbeggan actually leaves more of a tingle on your tongue than the cigar does, which is kind of interesting. It's usually reverse for me anyway, as I pair whiskeys and cigars. The Kilbeggan, just wanted to mention that, you know, there is no age statement on this single pot still, but again, the distillery just started, you know, distilling liquor or distillate in 2007, so it's not going to be like a Redbreast 12 or anything like that. I mean, theory, I guess it could be, but I think it feels and seems to me like a younger whiskey, probably more like 4 or 5 years with some older whiskey mixed in. But it is aged in old bourbon casks, which again, you know, you do get those hints of vanilla. I hadn't mentioned them, but you do on that initial sip of the dram. So we're gonna get to the band point, I think, and talk more about the Alec Bradley Filthy Hooligan Shamrock Edition and how it pairs with our Kilbeggan Single Pot Still on our special tribute to St. Patrick. We're about 50 minutes in. See that ash is barely holding on, but pretty decent size. Right at the band. This has required absolutely no correction. And the band does not pull off very easily. It's kind of disappointing, you know, you make these special ornate bands and make it difficult for people to actually save them. Finally got it. There we go. Flavors have remained the same. This kind of bounce back and forth between that leather and that grass. As far as the cigar, the pepper is ramped up a little bit in the back of your throat. As it's progressed past the midpoint. So interestingly, what the cigar does is it actually brings out the vanilla cream in the whiskey. And now I get a little bit, just a hint of lemon. That's good. And then again, that pepper kind of washes up. So I actually find that they complement each other pretty well. We're going to continue to move forward through the cigar. So we're down at the nub. We're about an hour and a half in. The strength has remained mild, maybe mild to medium. I'm not sure if that's the cigar or that's the whiskey, but wouldn't call this a strength bomb at all. The flavors have also remained pretty consistent. As we get down to the nub and it heats up, the pepper gets a little spicier, a little hotter. And that savory, it's not even leather anymore. It's almost like a savory graham cracker, like a sugarless graham cracker is there. The smoke has remained consistent throughout. It's still kind of pouring off the cigar, and remains bright and billowy. And again, paired with the Kilbeggan, ends up being a nice pairing. The sweet balanced by the savory pepperiness of the cigar, and it brings out the pepperiness on the aftertaste of the Kilbeggan. If you can find the Kilbeggan Single Pot Still, highly recommend it. With respect to the cigar, I highly recommend it too. Only because it just like the original Filthy Hooligan, it looks cool. It does have some wrapper problems. You can see where the Habano natural cracked a little bit toward the very end, but for a triple barber pole, which is pretty tricky, that's like a nitpick, a real nitpick. As a novelty release, I'd absolutely recommend it. So which would I prefer? The original Filthy Hooligan or the Filthy Hooligan Shamrock? I would go with the original Filthy Hooligan myself. Nick would go with the Shamrock. So she liked the grassy and pepper on the retro. I kind of like the mix of the grassy and chocolatey of the original Filthy Hooligan. But if you're looking for a St. Patrick's Day cigar that is novel and something you can share with your friends, you can't go wrong with either. You certainly can't go wrong with Kilbeggan. And somewhat like the Filthy Hooligan, it's the novelty of like Teeling, a single pot still that's not produced by Middleton. Right, Middleton dominated single pot still, but whether it's Middleton very rare, whether it's Green Spot, whether it's Redbreast, when you heard single pot still, you thought of a Middleton whiskey, and not anymore. And it has the distinction of being distilled in the oldest single pot still. It's about 180 years old in Ireland. So that's our pairing for tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll figure out what we'll do for next week. If you have any suggestions, please leave a comment. If there's anything that you'd like to see reviewed, anything that you'd particularly like to see paired, we'd be glad to do it. Please like, subscribe, and share, because we'd like to grow our channel. Not for any reason other than just to be part of the whiskey conversation, as well as the cigar conversation. Two distinct groups. Cigar channels tend to be things like, Cigar Obsession, Zeal Team 6, Cigar Daily, they all, Lee Mac, they all, Bob the Cigar Guy, they all do great cigar reviews. The Whiskey Channel, the Whiskey Boys, and of course, probably the quintessential whiskey channel, the Whiskey Tribe, also known as the Whiskey Vault. They're two different channels with the same people. So hey, let's be all part of the conversation. Like, subscribe, and share. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.